A lot of industrial companies think that CRM is just not for them. They look at it and they go, I don't know if anybody's going to use this thing. Our approach is, what if there was something that was like that, but maybe nobody needed to use it? It would just do stuff.
Welcome to the Industrial Growth Institute podcast. I'm Ed Marsh, your host. I'll say one of the real lightning rods in industrial sales is CRM. Everyone has an opinion, and it seems that few of those opinions are favorable. I've always found this personally perplexing because I've always bought solutions for myself as a sales rep even before my employers provided it. I think I probably bought my first laptop in, I don't know, it must have been 93 or 94. And I started with contact management and later CRM. Over the years, I've run Act and Goldmine and Sales Logics and Salesforce and HubSpot, Sugar, Pipedrive, and a couple others. I was trying to remember the names as I was preparing. I can't even think of the names anymore, but there's been a lot of them over the years. But at the same time, I've encountered companies, particularly in the industrial manufacturing space, where not only do reps refuse to use it, but they even go so far, for instance, as sending all customer messages. They won't use their company exchange server. They send them through LinkedIn message because they don't want the company knowing anything about what they're doing. And I'm sure you may be in a company, a $200 million company that relies on Excel spreadsheets. I'm certain that we've all seen them and heard about them. So today's topic is really charged. And we're going to really we're going to grab this third rail with both hands today, not just step on it. To help me do that, I'm joined today by Adam Honig, who has been focused on CRM since probably the late 90s, mid to late 90s. In his latest role, he's the CEO and co-founder of Spiro.ai. His focus is on helping manufacturers and distributors to achieve true visibility of their customers. And just to get us off on the right foot, I'll point out that he hates CRM and ChatGPT, and he claims to be semi-humorous. So I'm not sure if I'm going to get trolled during this session, but please do the drill, like it, share it, subscribe, comment, do everything that you know you need to do to help others learn about this content. And with that, welcome, Adam.
Thanks so much, Ed. I really do hate CRM. It's like a passion for me.
Yeah, don't let the sign convince you otherwise, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just, like you said, I've worked in CRM since the late 90s, and it's just the worst. If you were going to draw a graph of how much money people spend on something on one axis and then on the other, how much people hate it, it's top right quadrant. Like, I
It's
think
got to be up there
Gartner
with healthcare, maybe.
Well, yeah, going to the dentist, I think it's right up there with going to the dentist. And I love my dentist, but most people just hate going to the dentist. So,
All right, well, let's kick off with your recent exciting news. You founded Spiro 10 years ago, or co-founded it, and you just had a successful transaction. Congratulations.
thanks so much. Yeah, no, we wound up finding an acquirer for the business who is very interested in our story and mission, a company called Cordance that invests and helps grow companies in the industrial space. And so they've got a number of different companies, and now Spiro is one of them. And their goal is to help us become even bigger and more successful.
That's exciting. But I will say, I think the transaction is kind of old hat for you. I mean, your first company out of school, you did marketing for a couple of years, then you were a VP of sales and IPO'd. And
Yes.
then you founded a CRM consulting firm that you sold 15 years later. And then you started Spiro, which you sold again after a decade. So you've got a pretty strong track record as an entrepreneur.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's been a great journey. The first company that I was involved with, where I ran sales, we went public, and had a really bad time of it. Wound up losing a lot of money in the public markets. Wound up selling the company as a public company, and kind of vowed never to make that mistake again. But when I was running this company, Ed, it's very relevant to this conversation. I was the VP of sales. I had a whiteboard, about 10 feet tall, 20 feet wide, that we tracked every deal on.
Right.
And after we sold the company, I was like, there's got to be a better way to do that. And that's how I kind of stumbled into CRM. So we were one of the first partners of Siebel Systems, if you remember those guys, the precursor to Salesforce. And so that's how I, kind of stumbled my way into this really hated corner of software.
Speaking of software, you're not a typical software guy. You're not a finance bro. You're not coming out of private equity. You don't have a computer engineering degree. You've got a Cornell philosophy degree. How did that prepare you for this career path?
Well, first of all, I want to say I don't recommend philosophy as a major for anybody in general. When I was at Cornell, it was the major that had the fewest requirements, which is why I did it. I was much more interested in, let's just call them extracurricular activities than studies at Cornell. And so I kind of whatever the least I could do, that was my goal. My dad was very upset. He wanted me to study business. I thought business is super boring. I would never want to do anything like that. So stumbled into philosophy. Turned out to be decent for a sales background. Forming an argument, convincing people of the merits of your situation, understanding how to uncover, assumptions that people are making, in the process. So that all turned out to be reasonably helpful. But yeah, so didn't really have a software background, but I was always a tinkerer with technology. Never formally trained in any of it though.
I think I may hear a kind of a precursor in your obviously you call yourself semi-humorous. In your semi-humorous comment about philosophy being the discipline with the fewest academic requirements, my sense is that you almost take that approach today to CRM. You're trying to create a CRM that has the fewest requirements for the salesperson to use it. So
Well,
just teasing with that, maybe we'll come back to it.
okay, yeah, it's interesting. I think it's sort of a life philosophy of mine. Like
Okay.
there are some people who are about the journey. That's the more of the Aristotelian way of approaching life, and there are those of us who are about the destination, and that's kind of what I'm about. So whatever's the fastest path to get us what we want, I'm good with that.
All right, so a bit more context so people understand the gravitas that you bring to this conversation. As you said, you started with Siebel when you jumped into CRM in the late 90s. You gradually built your firm around the cloud and particularly Salesforce as it was in its ascendancy. You spent 15 years doing it, 750 enterprise-sized clients, thousands of implementation projects. So you know CRM, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. There's nothing really going on in CRM that I don't feel familiar with, unfortunately. We had many situations where we worked with companies right setting up, their CRM journey right from the beginning, or we were called into companies that had a big failed CRM project and tried our best to help it. And one of the things we learned along the way, especially with traditional CRM, is you needed something that's called change management to make it
Right.
successful. And we had a guy who had a PhD in organizational behavior, and we would bring him in to help our customers adopt CRM. Imagine needing to spend $500,000 just to get change management to get people to use the damn software. Like, what the heck? What is that
But what's
about?
funny is people don't have to do that with accounting software, even though the accounting software may be less user friendly, more cumbersome, more intrusive, and everything else. Yet they just accept the fact that they need to do that.
Absolutely. Well, as I like to say, I think that there's something different about the DNA of salespeople.
Okay.
We are just set up differently. Maybe more Neanderthal. I don't know what it is, but salespeople don't go into sales because they want to follow the rules. Salespeople want to go in sales because they want to win. They don't want to be monitored. They love the independence. They love the action. And so they're not typically process people.
And so is that why you hate CRM, or is there a deeper reason for that contempt that you have for it?
Well, I think that CRM in so many organizations is really just something that's put on the sales team so that management can know who to fire and not fire. And, when you peel back all the layers of what they're trying to do, they want to monitor people, they want to track people, and it's not about helping people. It's about, realizing, what the team is up to. And I feel like that's just the wrong approach. And the software itself is designed to thwart, good sales behavior in many cases. So I just feel like it's a completely backwards model.
Okay. Um, CRM, when you started, I would contend is very different than CRM today. What would you say? You've talked about why you don't like it. What would you say that CRM is or should be?
So, I mean, I think the goal of CRM is fine, right?
Okay.
Like having visibility as to what your customers are up to and what they're ordering and the conversations that the team is having, especially in industrial sales where there's lots of people involved in the customer conversation and being able to coordinate, all of that's really good. But if we're requiring the team to be data entry clerks in order to achieve that vision, it's just wrong. That's not what our teams are, successful at, and that's not what they're, being paid for. And as a matter of fact, if you require them to do that, we had a customer, Abbott Labs, a big medical equipment company out of the Chicago area, and we did a project for them because they were insisting on having a lot of required fields in Salesforce. And so we said, okay, well, let's just do an analysis of the existing required fields that you have. And what it turned out was that most of the required fields, if they were pick lists, 90% of the values was the number one option on the pick list. Nobody was looking at the values. They were just doing whatever they could to fulfill the requirement. They were being philosophy majors. They were trying to get the least
Right.
path to the result, right? And so, if you're requiring the team to put data in, you're just going to get garbage out of it. So I feel like, it's the goal is good. The objective is fine. Helping coach the team by seeing what's going on, helping get a better picture of the customer needs. Great. It's just the path to get there that's, ridiculous today.
Yeah, so often you end up with basically a poorly maintained database that shows some of what people have done. It doesn't help coaching, doesn't deliver accurate forecasting. But what if we shift the mindset and think of the purpose of CRM as being a tool to help reps sell more efficiently and sell more effectively in a dynamic way that ties together the business functions and helps them deliver a great customer experience, sell more, and make more?
Totally agreed. I mean, so the promise is good, the execution is really bad.
And
And
where does the execution normally go wrong?
well, in a typical company, there's nothing in CRM that's designed to help the team.
Okay.
It's sitting there. You type in your notes, and boop, they go away. Does it read the notes and remind you automatically to do stuff? No. You can create your own task, and you can put a time on it, and you have to do all the work to make all these things happen. And so today with like your iPhone, you can talk to Siri and you can make a reminder for yourself. You don't need CRM to do all those things. Like when you and I were young men dealing with all this stuff in the 90s, that was novel. Having a
Right.
tickler that you could
Right.
set to follow up with a customer because you haven't spoken to them in a while. But in today's world, when reps have thousands of customers that they're supposed to be dealing with, and they've got all these different emails and things going on in their life, they don't have time to set that up themselves. They need something that's going to just do it for them. And there's no reason why the technology can't do that today.
And that's kind of, I would say, a meta level set of problems. What would you say if we were kind of to get more granular and specific about what causes it? What are, do you think, the five most common root causes? Is it management expectation? Is it sales rep intransigence? What is it?
Well, there's like this CRM industrial complex in my mind that is like, oh, here's what you do. You take Salesforce or HubSpot and you install it, and it's just gonna be great for everybody. And it's gonna be awesome, and we're gonna get some data in there, and then yeah, let us know how it goes, guys. And so the number one problem that I see in CRM projects or companies is they don't know what they're trying to get out of it. Okay.
Okay.
So, like, you could have goals. You could want to, increase your cross selling by making sure you understand what a customer has and what fits with that. You
Hmm.
could try to get deeper penetration into accounts. You could try to bring on new customers. There's all kinds of different business strategies that you could be trying to achieve with CRM. But I would say, back in the consulting days, 1 out of 10 customers had that defined. And we would always try to stop them and be like, no, 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 great, you bought Salesforce, you're going to spend $200,000 on it. What do you want?
Right.
And they'd be like, well, we just want to have everybody use CRM. And that's just like a failure right out of the gate because you don't know what you're trying to achieve. So that's
So
the number one issue that I see.
then paint for me the picture, or tell me what it sounds like when you encounter a company. Either they figured it out on their own, or with your guidance and consulting, they've reached that point. What does a really appropriate, attainable, and maybe not inspirational, but worthy goal sound like for a company thinking about CRM?
hmm So let's just talk about the industrial sector, which is a little bit
Yep.
different than some of the other industries, and that's what we're entirely focused on. Right now, a lot of our customers are facing a big challenge in communication between their inside sales teams, who primarily are quoting products for customers, and their outside sales teams who visit them.
Okay.
And the outside sales team is spending a lot of time trying to gather information about what the organization knows about the customers before they go visit. And this results in meetings that they're having that are suboptimal. They're yielding, less, orders that are coming out of them based upon them not presenting the new products or the right products that people would want to see. So
Okay.
this is a very common use case that we see, that we want to drive order volume with our customers by having this deeper knowledge of them and presenting the right materials to them. It's not strategic. It's very, but it's core to the business. If you're trying to grow 5 to 10% in your business, you want to do it with good margin. You want to know, the items that your customers are likely to buy. This is a very straightforward path to doing that. But too often what happens is either the reps are wasting a lot of time pulling together that data, or they show up unprepared. And in either case, you're getting a suboptimal result for your business.
Right.
So that's a very straightforward exercise.
And I asked for an example. You gave me one. It happened to be around what I would call account management,
Hmm.
kind of land and expand as opposed to new logo sales.
Hmm.
Is that just the example that came to mind, or are you seeing industrial companies increasingly focus on trying to expand the footprint within existing accounts?
Absolutely, they're trying to expand the footprint. I mean, we have a wide range of customers, ranging from consumer goods to industrial products like electrical conduit, like
Hmm.
real hardcore stuff. But most of them are focused on expanding the business that they're doing with their customers and increasing margin at their existing customers. To
Is that
bring
be,
on another warehouse or another distribution center or another factory to service more customers is a big expense that a lot of people are hesitant to do.
and so there could be two things behind that. In some cases, I'm sure there have been acquisitions where private equity is coming in and pushing the
Yes.
margin expansion. In other cases, they may struggle trying to get new logos, so they default to the easier path. Do you have a sense of whether either of those are driving it?
Well, kind of behind that, there's a personnel challenge that we're seeing in the market as well.
Okay.
And so, it's a lot of the workforce for our industrial customers is kind of getting on the more senior age.
Hmm.
And they're having a lot of trouble recruiting new salespeople to come in and open up these new territories and stuff like that. And so you have two challenges. One, you have a workforce that's very well established with the territory with their customer base, and they can do well by servicing it. And then you
Hmm.
have the challenge of bringing in the young bloods to open up new things in that way. So I don't know if that's driving it, but I definitely see that as a contributing factor, in this way. And
Okay.
and these companies, our customers, are competing with the tech companies, for talent as well,
Right.
and it's a kind of a bit of an unfair fight sometimes.
Yeah, although I will say I've done some compensation research on behalf of industrial companies, and I think often they pay in a way that's pretty comparable. They may not have the allure of some chunk of equity, but the frequency with which that equity actually yields
Yes.
significant value for sales reps is pretty small anyway. And I think the quality of life in industrial sales tends to be a lot better.
Oh, listen, I'm all for it. And I've talked to a lot of people. I was talking with a company, a furniture company in the Midwest, and they were showing me how much they're paying their sales team. And I was like,
Hmm.
that's great. I would definitely recommend this job over, tech sales.
Right.
So yeah, I think there's a lot of good opportunities out there. I think that we need, and there's people who are working on this. I think the industry needs a little bit more of an image makeover,
Hmm.
though. We need a movie. We need an Avengers movie about, manufacturing and distribution or something like that. That's sort of my hobby horse.
There's a great YouTube video about the rebirth of industrial manufacturing. I think it's kind of a Rust Belt sort of a theme. I'll drop that link into the show notes, and I'll share it with you as well, Adam, in case you're
Yeah.
interested in seeing it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'd love to see that.
There's also an interesting company. I think they're called Rust Belt Recruiting, um, which is part of this movement. I mean, you're alluding to it, but you think about Manufacturing Day. You think about some of the trade associations like the NTMA, the National Tooling and Machining Association, does a lot to help parents and teachers understand the potential of careers and trades. And so it sounds like you're describing an analog for the sales and marketing piece of it, and that's kind of an interesting idea.
Yeah, totally. And so I run a podcast called Make It, Move It, Sell It. which is about the industry as well. And we had a guest recently, and they produce a game show, which is called the Clash of Trades, which is a fascinating thing to also bring up. It's kind of like a reality TV competition between all these different tradesmen to win, prizes and stuff like that. Again, just to kind of get the word out to everybody
Sure.
about what a great opportunity there is in this space, especially with all the macro factors, which we don't need to talk about, which I think are putting, the opportunity on the table right now.
Right. Right.
But I want to talk about this retirement thing for a second, because there's also sort of another driver use case in CRM, which
Okay.
is, you have this workforce, of people who will be retiring, in the next, 5 to 10 years, and your corporate information about what their customers are like is very, very limited. In a lot of cases, we have the purchasing contact in our ERP system,
Right.
and that's all we have for these companies. And our customers even struggle to send out Christmas cards to all of these people because they just don't know their customers that well. And so again, from a CRM perspective, like it's like, well, we don't want all these guys to type in all their notes so we know what's going on. We want them making the wheels of commerce turn. But it would be helpful for the company to know that,
Right.
especially when they're not there one day.
I'll share an interesting anecdote. One of my clients, they use HubSpot as a CRM,
Mhm.
which has a capability to automatically log emails. And one of the struggles they've had is identifying all the members of a buying team. Typically, in the capital equipment space, that buying team can be 12 or 15 people. And
Sure.
so they've got a plant engineer, that's the primary contact, but they don't know who else is involved, from safety and HR and finance and all of that. They have discovered that often project emails include the plant engineer will CC many of those buying team members on the email. And even though they're never in meetings, they're never participating in, the team's meetings or reviewing documents or anything like that, you can actually discern a lot of the people on the buying team through that sort of kind of intent data, if you will, much like you're describing.
Yeah. Now imagine, I know we're going to talk more details later, but imagine if the software could know that
Right.
and could automatically create those contacts and personas and find out other information about them to surface that for the company. I mean, that's some advanced stuff. Of course, Spiro does that, but we can talk about things like that later.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that. First, I know you've got your annual user conference coming up, but one of the interesting things about it is it's really not just for your software users. You also have a parallel track, or you welcome VPs of sales who are wrestling with this idea of CRM implementation and challenges, right?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we've learned is that the most successful sales leaders today, they understand data and they understand how to use that to their advantage.
And they can
So,
coach their reps to understand it as well.
exactly. And so when you're looking at an account, and a typical customer of ours has thousands and thousands of SKUs, when you're looking at a customer and you're going to go visit them, it's not sufficient to just pull up their last order. You look at the mix of products, you look at the product categories, you have to think about like what's the offerings that might really be helping them in whatever they're doing. And you look at the trends. And you can present to your customers the trend report of like, hey, other, industrial companies that we sell to are kind of moving in this direction. Here's what we're seeing with the product mix. Here's how it's going to make your process more effective. And they get that from the data.
Hmm.
It's not just taking people to lunch and buying them beers and stuff like that. It's showing them how they're going to help their business. And that's one of the reasons why we have that track in our user conference, is to really say, hey, yeah, there's people who set up Spiro technically, but here's how you get the most out of the results of it.
And do you find people who are not Spiro customers and who continue to use other CRMs come to your conference for that value?
So not typically.
Okay.
Most of the people who come to our conference are our customers, and people who are aware of us. I mean, we're still a modest-sized organization trying to get the word out as about Spiro, so we welcome people to come. But a lot of the content is Spiro
Okay.
focused. So
Got it. And how long have you run the event?
this is our third time running it. We call it Vision, and our plan is for the event to essentially give everybody, a taste of this vision of how they can transform their organization by having this better understanding of their customers. That's really the goal of it.
And what do you do for one of the fascinating topics that I'm digging into more and more is kind of community.
Hmm.
There's such an opportunity for communities in the sales space. You certainly know about. I'm going to vapor lock the name now. Um, this large group for marketing and sales. That's
Pavilion?
yes, Pavilion exactly. It was
Yes.
embarrassing. I couldn't remember that. Um, so they've got in-person events, but they also have a very vibrant Slack workspace.
Yes.
And so I'm trying to understand how that might apply more for industrial companies. Do you guys have a Slack workspace or a Discord or something where people don't only get technical support but also engage as a community?
I'm a Pavilion member.
Okay.
I really enjoy the Slack community. I've been to a number of the in-person events. The number of non-tech people who are in that community is really, really small.
Hmm.
And in our sector, with the tech, setup that most of our customers have, they're not Slack people. They're using Microsoft Teams mostly for video conferences, and it's not a great intercompany process. I would love to start something like that, but I haven't found a platform that's going to be, the way to make it successful in my view is having something that's native in the, stack of what people are using today. If we set up a industrial sales Slack, I don't know if anybody would join. Um,
Yeah,
you know,
it's a fair question, and I think I spoke with Kathleen Booth on this podcast one time about Pavilion, and
okay.
I mean I think it would be great for industrial people to join that as long as they had reasonable expectations. Don't get turned off by the buzzwords. Don't get freaked out by what doesn't fit for you, but come and learn some best practices. I'm not sure they will. I love this idea of somehow creating an analog in the industrial space. But you raise a good point about what's part of the native stack for people, and I don't know that there's a good answer, but maybe that's a thread that we should continue to talk about.
Yeah, I would definitely be interested in working on something like that. I mean, we see a lot of community on LinkedIn. We're very active on LinkedIn. We get a lot of our customers through LinkedIn. And so even though, I feel like people in the industrial space don't post a lot on LinkedIn, I feel like they're there,
Exactly.
you know?
Right.
And so I think maybe in a LinkedIn group or something, that would be a format that could be more easily accessible for people.
Now,
So, at our conference, there is a lot of networking that goes on, and it's great to see, people who haven't met before kind of working on different things together and non-Spiro related activities. So, yeah, it's a big part of the event.
speaking of LinkedIn, as I've casually observed your content, it seems like you're definitely over-indexing on video. Is that a fair observation? And if so, what has led you to that?
So, LinkedIn is a little bit of a mystery to me as to what works and what doesn't work. And I don't know if anybody's really cracked the code on it. I'm a frustrated broadcast person, I think. So I just like the video. I've got a video set up, and so it works for me. It's easier for me to articulate something on a video than it is to write a long thing.
Hmm.
So, but we mix it up. We do some longer form, articles. We do some, kind of posts. But I just, for demoing things of the product, which is what I do of a lot of on LinkedIn, I just think the video format works really well for that.
Yeah, I can understand that.
We haven't gone viral yet, but I'm still working on it, Ed.
All right. Well, it's a matter of the numbers. You got to just play the numbers, and sooner or later you will, I guess.
Something will work.
There you go.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
One of the CRM things that just amazes me is when a company decides, okay, we need a CRM, so let's take our accounting system and bolt on some module to the accounting system. Sales is so different. What's your reaction to that? Is that better than nothing, or is that just a fool's errand?
Well, I would say that it's usually cheaper than buying Salesforce or HubSpot. So if you're going to just throw your money away by buying one of those platforms, you might as well throw away less money. I think you get a higher ROI technically by doing that. Um, I mean, I've never, so the primary users of CRM are the sales team. And when you design software, you design the persona in mind that you're going after. And we are people who are focused on CRM or focused on that persona. And that's not at Epicor. It's not at Infor. And they make great products, for the, manufacturing and distribution segment, but not in CRM. you know? And so I've not seen a ERP CRM that like it's not just like, okay, well, we've got a sales order. Well, obviously we want to do a quote, so we want to have something before that, and that's CRM. Like it just doesn't work that way, you know?
So two related questions then. I think a lot in terms of capital equipment, industrial manufacturers building capital equipment that they sell to manufacturers. And
Hmm.
so often 30 to 40% of revenue comes from aftermarket. But
Hmm.
and those aftermarket contacts are critical for upsell and cross sell and rebuilds and reorders and everything like that. But often the aftermarket people don't use the CRM. They use the ERP. So you've got these two completely different databases. Do you recommend that everyone that's customer facing be in the CRM or not?
I do. And I'll tell you why they use the ERP, because there's critical data in there that they need. If somebody is calling up for a follow on, so we have a customer, they're called VC999, and they sell these industrial machines for sealing and packaging food. They take 99.9% of the air out of the package so the food doesn't go bad. Great. And so they sell these machines. They're hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they sell, the wrap that does the sealing, and they sell parts and support and stuff like that. And so for their sales team who sells the aftermarket stuff, they need to know the model of the machine.
Sure.
It's specific what's going on, right? They need to dispatch a technician to go do that. So they need this kind of critical information that's in the ERP system. The challenge is that to get to that ERP data, you have to be kind of a specially trained person to know how to figure out how to get to that data. And most of the time, you need to be in the company's office to do that, because that's where the software is. And otherwise, you need to get on a VPN and do all this stuff. And there's no mobile access. It's so the solution that we prefer and recommend is that you bring the critical ERP data into your CRM platform.
So you create custom
And
objects.
well, in Spiro, they're not custom objects. They're native because we're designed for this industry.
Okay.
And so we natively house all of the ERP data around parts and inventory and orders and, invoices and things like that. That's just native to our model because that's what you need in an industrial
So
CRM,
machine
right?
history, where you've got serial number, you've got the original bill of materials, you've got the warranty expiration date, all that stuff you've got in there.
Yeah, absolutely. You can have all of that data, right? And in a way that's designed for a salesperson to be able to access it,
Okay.
not an accounting person. Right. And so that's really the goal. And then some of the things that we're working on for the future is, instead of like trying to just navigate down a menu to find all this stuff, can you just ask the CRM,
Right.
oh, what's the model number for
Right.
this customer? And it boom, it just pops up kind of thing. And so it's a different experience that you would have with the same data, you know?
And so what you do, you get everyone customer facing using the CRM, but you enable that because you put the critical information in the CRM so that they can work from that one system.
That's right. That's right. And the ERP remains the source of truth.
Okay.
I mean, it is the backbone of our customers, right? But you need to provide that data in a way that people can consume it easily and do it whether they're in the field or in the office or wherever they happen to be. Because there's customers are going to call you at 10 o'clock at night too, because
Right.
they've got a problem on their production
Right.
line, right?
Related to that is a question of who should oversee the CRM. Another thing that just kind of stands my hair on end is when I find IT is in charge of the CRM, which takes all of the issues and challenges that we've talked about and just magnifies them on steroids in my experience. I'll piss a lot of people off by saying this, but I believe very strongly that you need sales ops to manage the CRM. Do you agree or disagree?
I generally agree, but I want to caveat it
Okay.
because, in my
You're
experience,
more diplomatic
like,
than I
like
am.
well, it's not just that. I mean, I don't care about being diplomatic. What I care about is the success.
Okay.
And I feel like the sales organization needs to say, this is the goal that we're trying to achieve, and this is the why. But the IT department can be very helpful in getting stuff done. And so I think there needs to be both parties at the table, but the sales team needs to be focused on the why
Mm-hmm.
and not letting the IT department say we should do these things because of this reason. Like if it doesn't meet the why, we don't do it. Like because there's that's and that's such a big problem in software development. Like you could spend a lot of time and a lot of effort doing stuff that doesn't matter at all
Right.
unless you really understand what that why is.
Right. And certainly IT does play some important role in making sure that the endpoints are secure. If you've got sales reps running around with mobile devices that access all the company's critical information, there are things that IT absolutely has to be involved in.
But the VP of sales, is typically a very busy person too, and if they are responsible for the setup and implementation of it, the project can go a little bit longer than everybody wanted to as well. And so we have one customer. I'm not going to say their industry because I don't want them to be known, but they're a great customer, love them to death. But like it's taking too long because the head of sales just owns it tightly,
Right.
and he's got a number to make. You know,
I'm going to run down a list of functions that I kind of just expect a CRM to manage. And it's a long list. Stop me at any time. Tell me if you disagree. And then if you can kind of maintain the log in your head as we're going, tell me what I'm missing off that list. All right.
I have the ability to remember about three things at once.
All
So
right.
let's see how long this list
All
is.
right. Contact management,
Yes,
task,
absolutely.
task management,
Sure.
activity tracking,
Okay.
pipeline, both for forecasts, but also to help reinforce the sales process, which we're doing not just as an admin check the box, but because we believe that's going to help people sell more successfully.
Maybe.
Okay. A coaching platform,
For sure.
templates, scripts, collateral management,
Maybe.
email logging and tracking, and document tracking.
I mean, I think all any information it can just automatically find and bring in phone calls, Teams calls, whatever.
How about if somebody opens a quote?
Maybe.
Okay. Integrated calling and SMS.
I mean, why not?
Okay. A single work location. I would, based on what you said a minute ago, you probably think that I conflate that with single source of truth. Um, but at least a single work location for reps to log into, which includes insights from marketing automation.
Sure, sure. I mean, I want to go through this list, but I also want to kind of step back and talk about my philosophy
Yeah,
of
sure,
this a little bit
absolutely.
to kind of use that word, because what where I think we are with software is that it's not a one size fits all world
Okay.
anymore. And people, when you have multiple generations, you have baby boomers to Gen Z that are going to be using a CRM or something that's like a CRM, but it's a lot better. People are going to do things differently, and the software needs to accommodate that as opposed to the everybody needing to accommodate the software. And this is one of the things that I think is really backwards about CRM. Is like we have a sales process, and there's certain important things in the sales process, but people approach it differently.
Okay.
And so my view of all of this, all of these features, is that actually people should just do their jobs and the software should just support it. And so I don't see it as a task management approach. I should see it as I'm doing my job, I'm calling customers, the software hears me say I'm going to follow up with them next week. And 6 days later, if I haven't followed up with them, maybe I get an email, maybe I get a text, or maybe the software tells me, hey, remember those guys? Like you need to follow up with them, or that's the way that I envision the world working for people, not hey, I got to go in and do this task and do this thing and blah blah blah.
All right.
Or the software's like, hey, you've got this quote outstanding, why not give them a call?
So,
And it knows we didn't.
so that makes sense. I completely buy into that vision. Let me toss a couple scenarios at you and help me
Mm-hmm.
understand how those fit. So you mentioned that reminder. I'm going to follow up with you next week. You get the reminder. Hey, you're supposed to follow up. That follow up requires some planning. It probably
Mm-hmm.
requires a document, whether it's formal and structured or informal. But there's certain things that rep needs to do before that follow up to make sure that
Mm-hmm.
they're optimally um, following up. And if suddenly the task pops up to do the action without that preparation, that can be a problem. Another scenario would be one of the biggest problems with forecasting, one of the reasons they're so chronically inaccurate, is that people skip steps along the way. Sales
Hmm.
reps fail to understand what the real timeline is, why a company must or doesn't have to purchase by a specific date. And so they build these forecasts saying, here's the close date. That's just purely, just some kind of an abstraction without any grounding in reality. If the
Hmm.
sales
Hmm.
process isn't um, kind of set up as a handrail, if you will, to ensure that the right kinds of questions are asked to test the veracity of a date that's established, then the forecast is inaccurate. So, with those
Hmm.
two examples, how would this very user friendly system that you're describing handle those?
Yeah. So a couple different thoughts. Let me answer the specific, and then I want to step back and talk about the overall view.
Okay.
But when you have a conversation with a customer, um, the software should be aware of that conversation. It should understand the context of it.
Mm-hmm.
It should understand the context of their order history or any of the other communications. So when you're alerted to this activity that you should take, you can open up your CRM or whatever you're using and see that context in there, whether it's product information or communication or whatever. I totally support that. Um, and then, from a forecasting perspective, which is, I think of the sales organizations at our customers having different maturity levels
Sure.
and different parts of the organization having different maturity
Right.
levels, and getting to a forecast stage where they can have a common process with certain understandings and understanding the percentages of conversion based upon where we are in that process. I think that's a great thing. It's a reasonably high maturity level based upon my experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what we try to do is more focus on activity and making sure that people are having really high quality conversations with people and knowing that's kind of a stepping stone to getting to that level.
Okay. And
So,
and
I mean,
so so you're recording phone calls, and that's how you're extracting the information. What about in-person meetings? How do you capture that?
yeah, it's super interesting. We don't capture so built into our product is the facility to hear the phone calls, transcribe the phone calls, have the AI understand the phone calls,
Okay.
and same thing on a video meeting like a Teams or a Zoom call or something like that. And some of our customers have said, "Hey, I'd love to have the Spiro pen that I could bring into the meeting and it just records it."
Right.
And I'm like, that is super creepy. I'm sorry, but I don't know how to do that today. But so we do have a facility in the product where people can basically just talk to Spiro after the meeting
Okay.
and give it the update. And that's kind of the state of play for us today. Maybe there will be some sort of futuristic thing, that will allow us to capture the in-person meetings, maybe on a glass heads-up display on a glasses, or I don't know what, but not anytime soon.
If somebody gets permission, sitting there in the conference room, records the meeting using um, like Otter or something like that, can they upload a recording to have
Oh,
information
for sure,
extracted?
for sure. If they want to dial in Teams,
Right.
in the meeting. Again, like when I think about people in the industrial space, like that's not I wouldn't say it'd be a very common use case.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so
All right. So we're getting more specific to Spiro. So let's talk
yeah.
about that. It's not like the world has a shortage of CRM. So what triggered you to go and start another CRM? This hatred of CRM? What was behind it?
Yeah, so I mean, so with before I started Spiro, I started this CRM consulting company which we wound up selling to another company, wound up selling to Accenture, and we worked with all these companies on CRM, and it was just very obvious to me the challenges that people were having with it. Like companies that would spend $500,000 on change management to get the adoption of CRM to go from 25% of people using it to 50% of people using
Ouch.
it. It's like, wow, you just spent $500,000 to do that,
Right.
and they were thrilled. They were
Wow.
like, big win for us. So great. And so, for me personally, what happened was I saw this movie called Her. And I don't know if you're familiar with this movie. It's been in the press a little bit recently because Sam Altman
Right.
brought it up. But basically, it's the story of a man who falls in love with an artificial intelligence in the future that can see through his camera, and she can listen to his conversations and read his emails. And she's played by the voice of Scarlett Johansson. So I'm sure, aided into why he fell in love with her. But anyway, I'm watching this movie, which is kind of crazy. And I'm thinking to myself, God, salespeople don't need Salesforce. What they need is Scarlett Johansson, helping them during their day. And that's really where the vision of Spiro came from. I was just seized with this idea that we are at a moment in technology where CRM can just fade into the background, be there when you need it, but just listen and observe and do stuff for you in a way that was never possible before. So that's why we started Spiro.
That's a really interesting idea. As you're saying that, I'm thinking, a transparent CRM,
Yeah, or no CRM at all.
right?
It's not there. We have a product that nobody needs to use. That's my dream.
Where did the name come from?
Spiro takes its name from the Latin word spirare, which means to breathe.
Okay.
So we're trying to breathe new life into the most hated area of software.
And why did you focus on manufacturing? Because everyone else is focused on tech, or what?
Yeah, so when we started the business, as one does, we sold to everybody.
Right.
And so even today, we have minor league baseball teams using Spiro. We have a couple insurance companies using Spiro. And but what we noticed was that the need was just much more acute in the industrial space. That the manufacturing distributors, they're not as tech forward. They have an even harder time using a product like Salesforce than a tech company. They don't have good processes in place typically there, and more importantly, this data model issue that you and I discussed. The existing CRM platforms were not set up to handle all of this ERP data.
Right.
You have to build custom things into it. It creates all kinds of problems. And we started building those for our customers in the manufacturing space. And we realized, hey, nobody's doing this today. And so we just felt like, it's a big, important sector of the economy. Nobody's really focused on it. Let's put all of our chips right there.
And if we talk about what fundamentally differentiates it, is there anything kind of about the software itself, the interface or the code, or is it really just the user experience that differentiates it?
Well, first of all, the fact that it's built for manufacturers and distributors means that the underlying model of the data, like we've discussed, is set up to do that.
Okay.
So Spiro has a way to house all the orders, all of the parts, all of these things that you need in your business. And the user experience of it includes all of that, but has been engineered to be super simple and easy to use so that a non-tech person can use it. So there's definitely that component of it. The other thing that I think is very specific to industrial companies is the fact that the AI understands these concepts. Like we've trained it, with all of this data from these kind of companies, so it understands the difference between a sales order and a quote and what the relationship is and stuff like that. So when you're working with it, it's smart
Mm-hmm.
in that way. And then third thing that we talk about, which is not a software thing, but I think it's a business model approach, is that we provide what we call a full service setup. So just hear me out on this. A lot of the companies we work with, they have IT organizations that have a lot going on, but they're needing help in making sure that technology gets stood up properly.
Mm-hmm.
And so we provide great software, but we also provide all kinds of service to go with it to make sure that it works. And so typically when you work with a Salesforce or somebody like that, there's a third party that you need to bring in
Right.
to help with that. It's all one thing with Spiro because we just feel like that connection is so important, especially for this industry, which is really built on relationships,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, it's a relationship industry. So
Okay. I think I first heard about you maybe 5 years ago, and obviously the thing that intrigued me was this idea of using AI to just communicate with prospects and customers and let AI sort the whole thing out. But you were doing that certainly before AI hit its stride over the course of the last couple of years. Have you substantially changed the product, or did you have the building blocks all in place?
no, we've substantially changed it. I mean, the in the past 5 years, the AI ability for AI to do things has increased. I don't even know what the percentage is. It's really big.
Hmm.
And so things that were really a struggle when we started the business 10 years ago are easy now. And now we can do all kinds of crazy advanced things that we could never do before, which are super interesting, like this idea that you can just talk with Spiro and have it provide you with data.
Right.
Or the fact that it can look at the call that you had and provide you feedback by itself on it.
Hmm.
And that it could listen to, like, a common use case for us is a lot of our customers believe that when you have a conversation with a customer, you should send them a follow-up email
Hmm.
just to document what you said, and everything's really clear. With one push of a button, Spiro will do that now. It'll draft it. It doesn't send it. It'll just draft it for you. Because that probably could save a half an hour
Right.
of somebody's time doing that. Not to mention people who have dyslexia or weren't English majors who've challenged to write emails and
Right.
so on. So it's incredible. And what's going to come, in the next couple of years is, I think, really going to enable this CRM that is just lurking in the background kind of thing, really getting away from people having to log into something.
Recently, there was a big splash when Christopher O'Donnell, who had been at HubSpot for years, announced that he and a couple other people were releasing what they call, I think, Day.ai. That sounds to me like it has a similar value proposition. Are you following that? Is there a distinction between the two, or are they doing something similar?
I'm not familiar with that, so I'll check it out. What I see a lot of announcements in the AI space, and there's all kinds of great work being done right now.
There's also a lot
But
of
if
smoke and
you're
mirrors.
Well, not so much smoking. Well, maybe there's smoke and mirrors, but what I'm concerned about in our segment of the market is things that are really the use cases set up for industrial
Hmm.
companies and not kind of generic models.
Right.
And a lot of software companies are started by guys who worked at software companies, and the very first market that they target is software
Sure.
companies. And that's beautiful, but it doesn't help a guy who's making ball bearings.
Right.
It's just a different thing.
We talked earlier about single source of truth. One of the things that worries me is when I see one marketing automation, one CRM, one ERP, and yeah, of course there's syncing. I mean, APIs make the syncing easy, but that's not the same as a single source of truth. And if you've got the aftermarket contacts trapped in the ERP, and you've got I can't necessarily think of a good example off the top of my head, but other information trapped in the marketing, maybe low qualification level prospects that aren't in the CRM, but they're in the marketing automation. Now you've got all these different places. How do you handle that? Does everything go into the ERP, or does part of it go in there?
Well, there's sort of a technical answer to it, which is related to the business model issue,
Okay.
which is that a lot of the marketing automation platforms charge based upon the number of contacts or the amount of data
Right.
that you have in with them. And I can understand that that's a driver of value for them, and that's why they do it. But it works against this approach of having unified data across the platform.
Hmm.
So at Spiro, we don't charge by the amount of data. You can put as much data in Spiro. You can have as many contacts as you want in Spiro. As a matter of fact, we create contacts automatically for people, as we talked about before. And so, I think that for customer communication, we typically recommend that Spiro is the source of truth for customer communication and contacts, because it's the superset of where things are.
Right.
For transactional data, for inventory, for all of that kind of stuff, should definitely remain in the ERP
Hmm.
as the primary source for it. So it's a little bit like a separation of
Right.
duties model.
Yeah, that sounds like a sensible bifurcation. I've believed for a long time that a CDP, or a customer data platform, will eventually be an integral part of the data stack, whether companies realize they're buying it or whether it's just embedded in something that they have. Scott Brinker had an interesting LinkedIn post on this recently. Do you think that CDPs, because of the volume of data and the complexity of data, will a CDP become more common? Will people have to buy it? Will they realize they're using it? Or am I kind of out driving my headlights?
Well, I haven't thought about this deeply, but my initial reaction is that given the state of play of AI that we don't really need that
Okay.
in the future. That we needed that. So a CDP, for listeners who may not be familiar with it, is a way to kind of combine the data from multiple different systems that house customer data into a platform that you can report on and stuff like that. And in the world where you needed to write queries that would link up the data and have reports in such a way that didn't have intelligence behind them, you needed that.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2 or 3 years, is the AI going to be able to say, okay, I know this from Marketo, and I know this from Spiro, and I know this from Kinetic, and I can just put all of that together to look like this
Got it.
in a way that we didn't need to go through that exercise of normalizing the data
Right.
to make that happen.
Yeah,
I think that's definitely within the realm of possibility.
that's an interesting point. Yeah, I kind of like that way of looking at it. You focus on manufacturing, as we've spoken at length, but also distribution. And so
Yeah.
that raises this question of sales channel. Let's talk about sales channel and CRM. How can they fit together? Can a manufacturer ever have their sales channel use the same CRM?
As their distribution channel, do you mean? Or
Yes.
what?
So give a seat to their distribution sales reps into their CRM.
We have not typically seen that.
Okay.
And one of the reasons why is that most distributors carry the product lines of multiple manufacturers.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would be cumbersome for a distributor sales rep to have to use multiple different CRMs.
Right.
And they're a different company. They have different objectives and goals. And so, like, going back to why we use CRM, like, we have certain business objectives that we're trying to fulfill with it. They may not align. So I don't see that. What I do see is our manufacturing customers producing reports for their distribution partners and meeting up at events like NAAD or something like that, where they share data with their partners and point out opportunities. And we have manufacturing customers that share leads to their distributors with Spiro, and like that's all good stuff. But I don't think running on the same platform is probably what I would see.
And how would you encourage companies to have more dynamic exchange of information? So lead reporting, lead registration, lead reporting are chronically frustrating for industrial
Yes.
manufacturers in their sales channel. One solution is a PRM, but that can be more elaborate and more expensive than companies want. Short of a PRM, what's a good solution?
It's a really good question, and it's not something that I feel like has been solved, frankly. So a PRM, a partner relationship management platform, has a lot of the challenges of CRM, but squared,
Right.
because you have to have both organizations using it. And then my analogy for this is, like, if you go to dinner with one person, it's an hour. Four people, is like 2 hours. But if you go to dinner with 8 people, forget it. It's a power
Right.
function
Right.
thing. And the PRM stuff kind of works the same way, and I think that's one of the problems, that it's never been widely adopted. I don't know if there's a technology solution or whether it's a business philosophy solution of who you're partnering with
Right.
and the expectations that you set with those people and the way you maintain and grow your distribution channel if you're a manufacturer.
Right.
I think it has more to do with that than a technology at this point.
I think that's a good point. I've often maintained that the IPP, the ideal partner profile, should incorporate elements like the philosophy and embrace of technology. And you want partners who are going to, whether you think that CRM is a waste of time um, or not, doesn't really matter in this context as much as whether your partners have the same attitude. Because if you want people using a system and they think it's a waste of time, that's going to create friction. On the other hand, if you're aligned, whichever end of that continuum you're on, that's probably an important piece of your IPP.
But I encourage companies to think about CRM as a journey and not as a destination. And I see partner relationship as part of that journey.
Except let
But
me
I think
interrupt,
it's
because at the beginning you said that you're not so much into the journey, you're more into the destination or outcome. So reconcile that for me.
Listen, I'm just filled with contradictions. I'm a guy who hates software, a CRM, who built a CRM
All right, fair
company.
point.
I don't feel the need to be super consistent in that way. But I would love our customers to be at the point where they just could use all this great technology and everything would be static and never need to be
Right.
changed. But that's just not the way the world
Right.
works. Even if we set up the perfect CRM for you somehow, a year from now, you're going to be like, we have this new product line, or we bought this company in Wichita. Like everything is going to change.
Right.
And so my desire for the destination means that I know that we have to have a way of getting there. I guess maybe that's the best way to think about
Fair
it.
answer. You've made a lot of really good
But
decisions over the years. Obviously, your track record is good. Your exits are impressive. What's a decision that you made where at the time you said, "Oh man, I've screwed up," but it really turned out to work well?
uh, God, so many bad decisions I've made over time. Thank you for saying I've made some good ones too. I mean, my last company, we were big partners with Siebel Systems. And Siebel Systems, if people are not familiar with, they were an on-premise CRM solution. They had a multi-billion-dollar market cap, and they just lost market share to Salesforce. And Salesforce was coming up; these guys were going down, and it was very difficult because we had all of our business with the guys who were going down, and we were getting a bigger and bigger market share of a shrinking market,
Mm-hmm.
and we were getting killed over here on the Salesforce side. And one of the things we did is we walked away from millions of dollars worth of business on the Siebel side just to be focused on the other side, and it was a really tough decision for us, and we had to change the team and
Wow.
make all kinds of structural changes to the business to do that. And for a while, it didn't look very good, I have to say. So it took us a while to ride out that change internally to make that happen. So I'd say maybe that was the closest kind of near death business experience that I've had.
But obviously, the right decision in the end.
It worked out for us in the end, yes. With a little help, we got there.
What's the harder prospect for you? A company that has bought CRM and is frustrated and ready to kind of just throw their hands up, or one that's never bought it before and is maybe using their own spreadsheets, or they've built their own Notion workaround or something like that?
So, to give you some context, about 75% of our customers have never used CRM
Wow.
before.
Wow.
So it's a very high percentage. The companies that are using CRM and are frustrated with it are typically easier for us to convert because they understand CRM
Mm-hmm.
concepts and they know what the problems are of CRM. And when we show them the solutions to the things that they already are using and failing with, it's a lot easier. Plus, they have budget because they're already spending money
Right.
on something. So that's a typical easier path. I'm working with electrical distributor right now who's never used CRM. They typical setup. The owner of the business, is in his late stages of his career, not super technology forward. VP of sales thinks that he's going to have all these problems we discussed. People retiring, they're trying to open up new branches. He has no visibility into what's happening. And the CEO is like, well, we've never done this before and we've been successful, so maybe everything's fine.
Right.
And so it's often looking for some catalyst in the organization that can help them understand the true benefit of this. So it can be challenging.
In a lot of industrial manufacturing companies, there's this change of generational control going on, often
Yes.
G1 to G2, G2 to G3, et cetera. Are you seeing differences? You mentioned the VP of sales. Often that could be, for instance, a son or a daughter. In this case,
Yes.
I don't know. But do you see an evolution in the perception of CRM as generations change?
Absolutely. So we were talking about electrical conduit earlier. We have a customer called Electroflex in Indiana, who that's their business, and it's great. You walk in the facility. There's the oil painting of the grandfather. There's the very nice professional photo of the father, who's the CEO now, and the son who's running sales. And often what happens for Spiro is it's at that moment where the G2 or G3 steps into the leadership role where they go, hey, Dad, where do we keep all the customer information? And they go, right here in my Rolodex.
Right.
And it's like, oh, okay. Like that's a moment that these organizations tend to evolve with. So you're totally on the money with that.
The fact that you know what the lobby looks like in one of your companies certainly differentiates you from many other software and CRM companies.
Well, I've been in so many factories. I was in a door factory in Alabama recently. I've never seen that much glue used. I didn't realize glue is like the number two ingredient in
Well,
doors. So yeah, no, we're all, listen, you know what the way it is. If you want to really understand something, you have to see and touch it sometimes. And we live this stuff,
right.
you know?
I think perhaps one of the most profound points from this conversation is that you actually have to go to the place, and so many software companies just have completely divorced themselves from the actual implementation. And that's probably reflected in the way they sell the software and then kind of throw their hands up and walk away.
Yeah. Or they focus on other software companies because they're more accessible,
Right.
you know?
What?
Yeah. You don't have to fly to Huntsville, Alabama to get something done.
Yeah, I think I've kind of gotten to be a direct flight snot a little bit, and we're lucky in Boston. It's not a huge hub. JetBlue has a hub here, but there's a decent coverage to a lot of places. But if it's not a direct flight, it's a day long trip to get someplace now.
Oh, it's crazy. I have to say, when we actually wound up driving from Atlanta into Alabama, and it was such a mind-blowing experience for me to know that the time zone changed when I drove across the line. Because usually it's just a flight situation. But
Right,
yeah, most of our customers are not in places that you can get a direct flight to. Bowling Green, Ohio,
right.
no direct flights there. So
That Alabama border time zone change when I was at Fort Benning. We used to fly racetracks around the drop zone at Fort Benning. We'd always come in from Alabama, changing time zones every 15 minutes as we make a racetrack.
yeah,
Also flying over the paper mill, so it'd be 100 degrees, 97% humidity, doors open on the aircraft, exhaust coming in off the engines, plus the stench of the paper mill. So if you were inclined to get airsick, that would do it to you.
yeah, definitely.
Biggest benefit that companies should be getting from CRM, but they don't even realize they should be looking for.
Well, so what we've learned, so our focus is on automatically collecting all of this data without anybody doing any work and providing visibility. So that was the first step. So you can go and see everything that's going on with the customer. What we learned is that there's patterns in the data that are hard to see.
Okay.
And one of the patterns that we look for, the software automatically looks for, is order variations. So a lot of our customers, they build relationships with customers and they place orders, over time, right? And so those orders might trend up, they might trend down, they might stop, in non-normal ways. And if you have a large number of customers, doing the manual analysis on all of that is not something that's going to happen. So, yes, so looking at the patterns of orders and pointing out situations that might suggest a customer is dropping off, super helpful. Also, the same thing with relationship data. If we're seeing all the emails, all the phone calls, all the Teams meetings, what about these guys? And if you can map, this is kind of where it gets super interesting for me. If you can map the amount of time you're spending with customers
Mm-hmm.
versus the order level, you can start to see some really interesting patterns. You can see those customers that are taking a lot of time, but they're not ordering a lot. And why is that? Are we investing in them because they're going to order a lot? Or are they a squeaky wheel who's just taking up too much of our time? And you know how it is. There's a lot of that going on with the smaller customers, and we need data to show the team, look, if you're focused on these guys, you're not focused on these guys, and you're going to lose because of it.
The book, The Jolt Effect, makes some interesting points about the velocity of communication in the latter stages of an opportunity. So not the meta level relationship with an account, but if you've got a pending project with an anticipated close date and you think it's a qualified opportunity, and suddenly the velocity of communication drops off, that's a huge warning sign about indecision.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so understanding the timing of the communication is something that's very surfaceable if you're capturing it.
Right,
If you don't have that information, can't be of any use to you.
right. You were fully in office before COVID. Now you've got a hybrid. Has that changed the way you think about a sales team and remote work and what CRM ought to do?
So what I think for me, the learning has been having been all in the office and then all fully remote during COVID and then kind of getting back is I feel like people still learn better in person.
Hmm.
And whether it's a training, whether it's people working together on a project or new team members learning about the way to do things.
And
And
just
I
absorbing
feel
the
like
culture.
Yeah, absorbing the culture. And I think Spiro and the industry sort of overcorrected on that, got a little bit overexcited during the initial periods. And I think we're getting back to where it should be now.
And of course, you're also selling to an industry where at least two-thirds of the workforce has to be in the building doing what they do anyway. And so that probably permeates the attitude a little bit.
Absolutely, but I think the other side to this, and talking about the struggles bringing in new talent into the organization. If I'm a manufacturer in Bowling Green, Ohio, we have a customer there, nice place. Maybe when you graduate from University of Chicago, you don't want to go to Bowling Green, Ohio, though. Maybe you want to go there 2 days a week, but you could be remote.
Right.
Like I think offering that kind of structure for the industry could work well,
Sure.
for talent acquisition.
Right.
And if they had tools that could support that, like, software that you don't need to VPN into the office to get access to, that would be a way to do it.
So you've been selling CRM or CRM related services for the last 25 years. How has your sales methodology or sales approach evolved?
I mean, we've done every sort of sales approach that, we could take. So I'll tell you what hasn't changed. And this is part of what we talked about a little bit earlier, which is, being in person with people and really understanding them. And there's no substitute for being at somebody's office to really understand their work and their life,
Right.
and to have, impromptu interactions with other people that can educate you about how you could help somebody. And nobody ever walks in impromptu on the Zoom call. Like that's just not a thing.
Right.
And so I strongly believe in that. But we've used Medic and all kinds of other processes over the years to try to improve and measure different things and try different structures and stuff like that. So I think just always being experimenting is probably the way to approach it. You never get it right either, probably.
Well, and the market's always changing. So as soon as you get it right, then it's no longer right.
Exactly.
What's the best way for people to get in touch with you? How do they find you? How do they connect with you? You mentioned LinkedIn. Obviously, you got a website. What do you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, connect with me on LinkedIn. It shouldn't be too hard to find Adam Honig on LinkedIn. There's a couple other Adam Honigs, but none as handsome as me. I just want to
I'll
say
put your
that.
profile in the
But
show notes, so they're sure
but
to
or
find you.
the company website is Spiro.ai. So definitely check that out. Feel free to email me, Adam at Spiro.ai, however people want, whatever mode of communication people are happiest with, that's fine with me.
Good. Adam, this has been great. As we come to the end, wrap us up. What do industrial companies misunderstand about CRM, and how should they approach it to really get value out of it?
Well, in my view, a lot of industrial companies think that CRM is just not for them. They look at it, they look at Salesforce, they look at HubSpot, and they go, I don't know if anybody's going to use this thing. And our approach is, what if there was something that was like that, but maybe nobody needed to use it? It would just do stuff and give you the visibility that you needed. Wouldn't that be amazing? And that's what we built. That's what Spiro.ai is. So that's my closing argument here today, Ed.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thanks for your insights. Thanks for your semi humor. I've enjoyed the conversation and appreciate the ideas that you've shared.
Right on. You're doing a great job, Ed. Really enjoyed your hosting of this. As somebody who hosts a podcast, you do an excellent job. I
That,
just want to say.
that's kind of you to say. Thank you. So, speaking of podcasts, for everyone listening and watching, thank you for your time. Thanks for listening. Drop a comment about what surprised you the most. This is kind of challenging a lot of sacred cows or traditionally held ideas. So, share comments on where you were caught by surprise by this conversation, how it may have changed the way you think about CRM. And while you're doing that, of course, please subscribe. So, thanks very much, everyone, for listening.